Have you ever thought about getting flexible and then you go ahead and you decide to actually do it? So you get ready and then you go ahead and you stretch. And while it may initially suck, it does feel good when you are done. You even feel somewhat more flexible. But then the next day arrives and you feel sore everywhere. And what's even more surprising is your whole body is super tight. You're even less flexible compared to when you were when you never stretched at all. So what gives? The answer is, yeah, that's normal. Yep, you heard me right. After stretching, you should feel sore and tight the very next day, which might be confusing because you might think that stretching should do the complete opposite. And yep, you're also correct on that. Stretching does make you feel all nice, relaxed, and all that jazz. And now you might be thinking, how can stretching both make me super tight and sore and flexible all at once? Well, let's go over it. Do you remember the first time you worked out and the next day you woke up super sore? At that time, you might have felt discomfort, but you also knew that waking up sore was a good thing when it came to working out. It means that the workout is working and you'll get stronger and better, and that is nothing to panic over. Do you remember when you stretched for the first time and then the next day you woke up sore and tight? The only difference here is you thought that soreness and tightness was a bad thing, and then you somehow went and convinced yourself to never do it again. When working out, there's something called the stretch. It's when the muscles are at a lengthened phase. You might have heard buff individuals talk about feeling the stretch in the hamstrings while they're doing a deadlift type of motion, or to feel the stretch as they did a lat pull down, specifically in the extended position. Farmer carries, an exercise done to produce no necks, is just a big old stretch for the trap muscles. Whenever you perform any movement, one group of muscles is being contracted while the other is being lengthened. These movements are grouped into concentrics, eccentrics, and when you simply just hold the position, known as an isometric. You're probably used to isometrics like L-sits and planks. What I'm trying to say here is stretching is just working out minus the eccentrics and the concentrics. If I'm not flexible and I hold the pike position, it's just the starting position of the deadlift. If I lift my arms up and I push them over my head, that's just the finishing position of any overhead press movement. I'm here to tell you that working out and stretching is more or less the exact same thing. It's just how you view it that makes it different. If you view stretching as this soft, relaxing thing, you're never gonna see great results. The same way, if you view working out as this soft, great, relaxing thing, you're never gonna see great results there either. So when you go ahead and you stretch hard, especially if it's your first time, of course you're gonna get sore, but that's no different when it comes to any physical activity when doing it for more or less the very first time. And then you might have the question, what about flexible people like me, who, when I go ahead and stretch, I make it look super easy and effortless? Let's use the working out analogy, all right? There are certain individuals out there who can bench press 315 pounds, and there are people who can be bench press 135 pounds. If Mr. 315 is benching right next to Mr. I can't bench press 135 pounds, and both of them are bench pressing 135 pounds, well, Mr. 315 is gonna make 135 pounds look light and effortless compared to Mr. I cannot bench press 135 pounds. And why is that? Well, the answer should be pretty obvious, but I'll go ahead and spell it out. You see, it's because when Mr. 315 pounds, when he's benching 135 pounds, it's a warm up for him. So of course it looks light and easy. And thus, flexible people are Mr. 315 pounds, whereas most other people are Mr. I cannot bench press 135 pounds. And because the human body is carrying at all times 135 pounds worth of flexibility resistance, I just made that up by the way. If you try to stretch and you're not Mr. 315 pounds, you're gonna go ahead and look like you're struggling quite a bit. Whereas the Mr. 315 pounds of the world, they're just more or less just always warming up indefinitely. With strength, you can theoretically marginally keep pushing the amount of weight that you're lifting over time until you get to some ridiculous numbers. With flexibility, however, there is an anatomical limit. No matter how much you stretch, you will never be able to twist your head 360 degrees. No matter how much you stretch, you cannot reach above your head more than this. Likewise, the two greatest distance that you could spread your body apart is just the middle splits from toe to toe. Flexibility is by nature finite, and there's nothing you can really do about it to expand it. The human body only has X amount of ranges of motion that it can go through before everything just starts to snap, crackle, and pop. And of course, there are some genetic anomalies that can do some incredibly flexible things with their bodies, but those are the few and in between and the outliers. And even for them, they do have their own limits. And say, for example, let's say when you first started stretching, you're able to do the full splits. 10 years later, you're still stretching, and believe it or not, your full splits will look more or less exactly the same as when you first started because you reached that finite limit right when you started. If we go ahead and compare that to working out, let's say you step into the gym for your very first time and you bench press 135 pounds. 10 years later, you're still working out. Of course, you're not benching 135 pounds. It's going to be a lot way more. This makes stretching both hard to obtain and quite frustrating to observe. Hard to obtain because nobody really knows how to go about and do it, and frustrating to observe because when you see people like me doing it so effortlessly, it just becomes one big old mystery as to how. At least with lifting weights, you can clearly see the effort it takes to move a massive amount of load. But when someone just casually busts out the splits, it's just a big old head scratcher. Fret not though. Let's quickly go over the principles of stretching and how to go about getting flexible. But before that, I want to go over just some very basic, kind of cheesy words of advice when you first start stretching. 1, focus on your journey. Everybody has their own different starts. Just because Timmy busted the splits on his first day doesn't mean you will. Also, just because you see someone who is vastly more flexible than you doesn't mean they had it easy. It's always kind of hard to tell. Take me, for example. I might have been born able to do this, or I might have busted my shit trying to learn how to do this. Who knows? 2, progressive overload. Focus on improving if you want to improve. And I don't really know why that's so hard to understand. Actually, I do, because when it comes to stretching, people typically view it as something nice, soft, and relaxing to do. Unfortunately, when it comes to stretching, that creates a mindset that only seeks good feelings instead of actual tangible marks of improvement. If we're stretching to improve, we're trying to see if we could go further, hold harder variations, hold a certain position for a longer amount of time. So if you're not doing any of those things, you are directly neglecting progressive overload and you will not improve. So don't do that. 3, and this is the very, very obvious, consistency is key. Just like with losing weight or gaining strength, once you've lost weight, you got to continue to keep it off. Once you gain strength, you got to continue to make sure you don't lose it. And like with flexibility, once you acquire a little bit of flexibility, you got to keep stretching in order to maintain it. Use it or lose it. But also, obviously, just like with anything, progression is not always linear. You will have good days, you will have bad days. So long as you keep trying and doing it consistency, good things are bound to occur. And I would like to add the caveat that stretching every day is indeed quite a very good starting place. However, if you're just warming up every single day for your stretches, then you're not really going to make improvements. It's like going to the gym and just warming up and then leaving. You can't improve if all you do is warm up, all right? I got way more general tips, but let's go into the principles of stretching in order to get actually flexible when it comes to stretching. Number 1, this one might be a little bit hard to understand, but did you know that when it comes to stretching, there is a proper form and execution in order to get the most bangity bang for your bucks? And now the form that I'm talking about isn't necessarily, hey, when you do a pancake, you want to have an anterior pelvic tilt, straight legs, toes back, tall spine, and you want to go down going forwards. That's not what I'm necessarily talking about, even though that is very good and it should not be neglected. What I'm actually talking about is the universal thing that you do when it comes to any type of stretch, no matter if you're flexible or not flexible. And this will work no matter who you are. And it will work no matter what stretch you're doing. Whether you're doing something as simple as wrist curls or something as complex as the splits, it will work. It is called flexing your muscles while you are stretching. Let's take, for example, the pike position. While we're in this position, one set of muscles are being contracted and the other one is being lengthened. The muscles that are being contracted will be the quadriceps. By putting tension within the quads, that's going to help straighten out the leg. It's going to increase the stretch on the hamstrings. Also, if we look at the abdominal muscles, if we go ahead and we engage them, use that muscular tension to actually pull our body lower, that's also going to increase the stretch in the posterior chain. Likewise, the posterior chain, in this case the hamstring, is being stretched, and so in order to maximize that stretch and to build strength in that lengthened position, we have to isometrically squeeze it. More or less, your whole body is now tense and you're working as one cohesive unit in order to stretch out the hamstrings. This very directly builds strength in that lengthened position, which a lot of people have trouble in. Did you know that strength is joint angle specific? Meaning if you want to build strength in a certain angle or position, you should definitely try to build strength in that very specific position. For example, just because you can squat 500 pounds doesn't mean you can keep your legs straight at a 90 degrees. Why? Because you never trained that leg straight at 90 degrees. Not to say that carryover doesn't exist. It's just to say strength is indeed joint angle specific. And when it comes to flexibility, we do want to tackle that joint angle that we are not very comfortable in, because that is the way we're going to go ahead and improve our flexibility by doing something that we're not very good at and then getting good at it. That should make sense. The more strength you build, the more flexible you become. Moving on to number 2, max sets. If I told you to go ahead and do a 1 rep max when it comes to stretching, would you know what I'm talking about? If you do, nice. If you don't, let me teach you a little bit. The golden rule here is treat stretching like a legitimate workout. So you're gonna have warm-up sets, you're gonna have working sets, and then of course, occasionally you're gonna have 1 rep maxes. Unfortunately, unlike with working out, where it's very easy to see effort by means of heavier weights being pushed, when it comes to stretching, it's a little bit more nuanced. Take me, for example. When I am warming up for the pancake, this is my warm-up sets. This is how I look. I'm relatively close to the ground, and it's nothing too serious yet. I'm barely even trying. When I go ahead and get into my working sets, my body is completely flat on the ground, and I'm trying to inch my way a little bit more forwards while trying to spread out my legs even more so. Finally, on the rare occasion that I decide to go ahead and max out, I am really dragging myself as far forward as I can. My butt might be coming off the ground, even though it might be a little bit hard to tell, and I'm really going for that complete perpendicular look. It also feels quite horrible. Every stretch that you do can be done in these 3 levels of intensity. Of course, there's more than 3, but I'm just using 3 to simplify it. You might say that you can barely touch your toes, and I'll tell you, doesn't really matter, man. Even if your working set is just 1 inch further than your warm-up set, and your 1 rep max is 1 inch further than that, doesn't really matter. That's just where you are currently. It's no different from a deadlifter who can deadlift 700 pounds. Of course, when a guy that can deadlift 700 pounds is warming up, you're gonna see his huge amount of strength because he has to go through a lot of weight in order to get to his max. Compare that to the guy who can only deadlift 135 pounds. His strength arc isn't going to be that impressive compared to the 700-pound guy. The same thing is true for flexibility. If you're really flexible, it's kind of easy to see, whereas if you're not, it's really hard to tell. Therefore, it makes it quite important that you understand your body and that you do know when you are moving further or when you're not moving further. Number 3, and the last one, there's more, but I'm just gonna stop at 3. Have you ever gotten stitches in your stomach while you're running? Or have you ever felt that burning sensation while you're working out really hard doing higher rep sets? Depending on which physical activity you do, there will be a certain sensation and discomfort that increases over time the more you do it and the harder you do it, letting your body know, hey, we want to stop. Of course, that sensation isn't a bad thing, and it's good to continue to push past that sensation in order to build greater strength, flexibility, movement in whatever activity you're doing. Of course, the same is true for stretching. For stretching, we know that feeling as a burning, stretching, ripping, tearing type of sensation, and it's not a bad thing. Here's a fun little fact, just between you and me. When I wasn't as flexible as I am today, stretching hard at a certain level of intensity sucked just as much back then as it does today. It has never gotten any better. I've just gotten more flexible. Meaning, if you want to improve, it will never get easy. So get that into your head. On that note, pain can be classified as good and bad. The good type of pain that we want to experience while stretching is that burning, ripping, tearing, being pulled apart type of sensation. The main characteristics of this type of pain is it's building. The lower you go into a stretch, the deeper you sink into a stretch, the more that intense feeling will increase. Likewise, if you start to ease off of it, that intense feeling will automatically decrease. You have control over it very voluntarily. And when you ultimately get out of the stretch, that sensation will dissipate nigh on almost immediately. Whereas the not so good type of pain, the bad pain we're gonna classify is gonna be sharp, immediate. It's like a paper cut or touching a hot stove. Your body will involuntarily move you out of the position on reflex without you being able to control it at all. Also, when you are out of the position, the pain might continue to persist. It sucks. That's the bad type of pain and the one that we want to avoid. I will round that off by saying if you're afraid of pain in general, you're never going to get as flexible as you can be. If you avoid that great level of discomfort, you're never going to be as flexible as you can be. Just like with any physical activities, there will always carry some form of a risk of injury. That doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's something you have to come to terms to accept. The more you stretch, the more you get used to that quote unquote pain of discomfort, the more you'll start to understand it and you'll be able to push the boundaries within a very safe level. However, if you have zero experience in it and you just avoid it all the time, anytime you experience it, it will feel very foreign and you'll just start to panic and you'll convince yourself it's not good. And then we go full circle and you'll never get as flexible as you can be, which sucks. Lastly, and this is lastly now, 3 final quick tips to get you started if you're relatively new. Number 1, for every stretch or every set of a stretch that you go ahead and you do, go ahead at some point in time and try to reach as far as you can for a very hard 3 seconds. All this is going to do is just teach your body what it feels like to be really intense for a relatively short amount of time. Over time, that short amount of time is going to add up to one another. It's going to increase your experience with it. Very good. Number 2, pick 2 to 3 stretches to focus on. While having a nice routine of like 20, 30, 15 stretches is nice, at the end of the day, that's just spreading yourself thin. You must rather focus all your energy on just a very acute 2 to 3 that you really need to work with. Number 3, and the last thing I'm going to tell you is, do not get caught up in overly complicated stretches with way too many materials and items. At the end of the day, it's the basic type of stretching bullshit that works the best and yields the greatest results. Keep it basic, keep it very, very simple. Now that you know all that stuff, you can go ahead and become more flexible. Now you know.